Getting the job done right is the goal of every home builder and homeowner. As a member of our building community, All Access will become a trusted resource for every stage of your building and renovation projects. Plus, we're constantly adding new project guides, videos, articles, expert tips, and more for members only, because there's always more work to be done. Sign up now or give a gift to another builder at finehomebuilding.com/allaccess.
And it just limits. If you wanted to add on from a different box, it limits you because you can't have all those wires because they will heat up in there. And the type of box that he's talking about, where it's one, and then it's octopus, it would have to be the size of a 5-gallon bucket. I would think that junction box would be.
Welcome to the Fine Home Building Podcast, our weekly discussion of building, remodeling, and design topics aimed at anybody who cares deeply about the craft and science of working on houses. This is Senior Editor Patrick McComb. Today I'm joined by Senior Editor Mark Peterson.
Hello.
Fine Home Building Video Director Colin Russell.
Hello.
And our producer Jeff Rose.
Hi there.
You can find previous podcasts and email your questions to FHBpodcast. You can find previous podcasts and check out the show notes at finehomebuilding.com/podcast. Well, it is a pleasure to see you guys this morning. Thanks for being on the show.
Hey, Patrick.
Hey,
Colin and Jeff, good to see you.
Good to see you this morning.
So I couldn't help but notice you don't have Colin up in your little name bar. You have Patrick too. Any good reason for that, or just to confuse me?
My middle name's Patrick, so I'm claiming it.
I didn't know that.
My initials are CPR, which is
nice.
It's Colin Patrick Russell.
What have you been doing on your place, Colin Patrick Russell?
Well, let's see. I've tiled the floor of the shower pan and just the regular floor in the bathroom.
Okay, so this is exciting because you used the Ready Base, which is the pre-made shower floor.
Yes.
And I think as we talked about it in a previous show, you have to use a special thin set, right?
Yes, epoxy. Epoxy. I guess it's a 3-part because you have the 2 epoxy components and then I call it aggregate, the dust. It's
sand, right?
Yeah, like what makes it cement, I guess. But it was simple, and I didn't mind working with it, and it's water cleanup. So that's what was terrifying to me. Was I going to have like a bucket of chemicals, and you have the gloves on, you can only touch it 3 times, or but it wasn't. It's like, I don't know.
So water cleanup, really? That's surprising to me.
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, I threw the bucket out. Like I wasn't gonna.
Yeah.
But water cleanup, like you got it on the tiles, you could clean it off. It wasn't a problem.
Have you grouted yet?
No, I haven't. I moved on into the larger section of the floor with large format tiles, 12 by 24 staggered.
Ooh.
Are you using the epoxy thin set in those areas also?
No. What I ended up doing was, after waterproofing with the Mapei Aqua Defense in the shower area, because I have a window and a nook, and I was just like, I'm going for it. I ended up doing the whole floor. So like I waterproofed the whole room. So I don't know. It was just kind of fun. Like when I tiled, I used regular thin set out in the main floor.
How's it looking?
How big?
Go ahead.
How big?
How big of a space is it? The regular
40 square
floor?
feet.
Okay.
Yeah.
But when you went with the big tiles, how did that turn out?
Oh, great. The one thing, a choice I made, like in all the pictures online with the 12 by 24, if you have the subway look, they go like 50%, but you can't do that with like the tiles from Home Depot. Like even though the pictures show that for the design, when you look on the box, it's like no more than, I think, 6 inches, because of you'll end up with a lot of shadow areas and stuff because the tiles aren't perfect.
They aren't flat, right?
Yes, they aren't flat.
And
so when you say no more than 6 inches, so you can't stagger them more than the seams can't be staggered more than 6. Oh, interesting.
Yeah. So that was something I didn't realize until I had them. And when I lined it up at 6 inches, it didn't look quite right to me. So I decided to go for 8 inches since I only had 40 square feet. It's not, you're never going to get like raking light in there and a little inconsistency to your foot won't be an issue. But I thought it was just something I learned along the way.
Is this just like a solid pad or a solid color, or did you go with like a wood grain?
Oh, it looks like a sort of like a black slate. So there's some veins in there. You know, it looks very natural. It's almost like pre-scratched.
That's always handy.
Yeah. Very good for my lifestyle.
Are you happy with it? Are you pleased with your work?
Yeah, I mean, in all honesty, I felt like I had to mix 2 batches of thinset to install. And the first one, you know how it's like when you mix concrete, the drier you go, the stronger it is. So is that true? Like when you mix concrete, like
you have to fully hydrate it, but you don't want to put any more water than you need to.
All right. Yep. So I decided to go, not like I'm worried that this is dry, but go a little stiffer than I usually go with thinset on my first go. And I just felt like when you just touch the tile to it, it wasn't getting that tack that you really want to get, you know? So my second batch, I mixed a little thinner. So that night I'm like, I know when I walk in that bathroom, I'm going to step on the corner of one of those tiles and it's just going to snap. But
yeah,
I've been in there working, finishing the joint compound, and I've, some paneling, and I'm going to start on the built-ins. I've been walking on it. It's fine.
That's cool.
Yeah. And usually if something's going to happen, it's going to happen sooner than later. I did the same thing. I did some 24 by 24s, and I was terrified that there was going to be a void and somebody was going to step on it and it was going to snap. But I
think tile work, like concrete work, it's disconcerting, because if something goes wrong, it is a huge problem. It's not like you recut the piece and reinstall it. Like, no, you're starting over.
And you're on the clock. That's what makes it worse. The clock, the time is ticking.
I did, unbeknownst to me, one time I was sold a grout that was meant to be put in service right away for like commercial floors and stuff. And I'm putting this stuff on the wall tile, and it is setting up, and it is very terrifying. By the end of the job, it was like 4 inches of completely hardened thinset in the bottom of my bucket, right?
Wow.
I made that mistake once, and that was, and the first, you do a big 4-foot section, 4 by 5 foot section or whatever right away. And then at that first section, you realize, whoa, I should have not done this. I shouldn't have started this big.
What have you been doing on your new place, Mark? I bet it's very exciting.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, last night I sent you a picture.
I saw it.
So I tried to get out there about 4:30 every evening, and this is the first time.
God, it would be dark here.
It doesn't get. We get about an hour of daylight, and then it's lights after that, and we usually work till 6:37. But the framers are getting used to us coming out, so this time they had us. They knew we were just me and a neighbor were coming out, and so they waited to set this big giant 30. What would it have been? 30 or 44-foot wall, with the sheathing on it. So it was heavy, but it was satisfying to watch it go up quick.
It looked heavy. I wanted to be there as your cameraman because you had the first part of the shot perfect, and then you guys lifted the wall out of frame.
Yeah, well, because Instagram kicks it down, and it was kind of I got lucky that it was that good, because as I was standing ready to lift, I'm like, oh, wait a second, I want to get a video of this. So I just threw my phone down on a piece of 2x4.
Oh, it was perfect angle.
Yeah. And then I was walking back, and the guy next to me goes, by the way, you got your camera pointing the wrong way. So it was, if he wouldn't have told me that, I would have had a great picture of a 2x4 really close. So, but yeah, I was surprised because I literally didn't. I just plopped it on there and ran back and lifted. But yeah, it was fun.
So where are you at? How close are you to putting trusses up?
Trusses are coming tomorrow morning, but I think we got about 2 days of really high winds and really rainy weather. So my guess is they're probably going to go up on Monday. And I think they're going to get together a couple of different crews together. So just crank them out.
I presume they'll get a crane.
They're debating on that, and I'm surprised they're debating because it's 2 stories with. That's the top plate is 20 feet off the ground, and these are 12.
Tell them not to debate.
12 pitch, so the trusses are 13, 14, or what would they be? They'd be 12, 13 feet in the air, tall. So that sounds like a crane to me. But,
that's money well spent just for your own sanity.
They do have a big telehandler out here, but it's just, I think it doesn't have quite the reach that they're going to need for the tall trusses. But yeah, things are moving along. I'm excited. Tonight after work, I'm going to meet the the cabinet guy. There's enough, there's the kitchen walls are all in, so there's enough for him. And the cabinet lead times are so far out right now that.
Yeah, I heard like 12, 16 weeks. Is that what you're hearing?
Yes, it wasn't so bad for there were certain it seems like the higher, I've lowered my expectations on my cabinets just for financial reasons. So that seems like the higher end you go, and customs are 3 months out. And I think these are, what do these say? 6, so a month and a half out for the ones that we're looking at, which is fine. If we order them at this stage, we'll be fine. But yeah, stuff's happening. It's nice to see progress. Really nice.
Jeff, what have you been doing?
Nothing very exciting. Put some lights in my attic and replaced the latch mechanism on my front door.
And are you missing like the bigger projects this time of year, or are you quite happy to be doing this stuff?
Right now, I'm pretty happy with it. I was kind of thinking about, all right, so what should I do this winter?
Mm-hmm. So. I've been slowly working on the stairs. I put on 7 treads and risers, and worked on the top landings a little bit. And that doesn't sound like much, but there was some other finicky carpentry to go along with that, and it takes forever. But it's satisfying work, and we're finally starting to see the light at the end of the tunnel with regard to this project.
Are you finding that you have to fit each tread a little bit just to get it right?
It depends on, I am, because I'm not getting paid to do this by a client, or, you know what I'm saying? I can futz around with this for hours if I want to. So to do a good job, it takes a little fiddling. And
how are you fastening them to the stringers?
With 15 gauge finish nails.
No glues of any sort?
I wish I had some construction adhesive at the house here, but I didn't go buy any. I figured I can live with a little squeak or two if it comes to that. It hasn't been, they don't squeak yet, and we obviously haven't been through several heating and cycles, right? But, we're not out here at nighttime, and
there's certain things that drive people completely bonkers, and I'm included. I have the list is very long for me. Squeaky, you know what? Squeaky floors has never been one of them. I don't know if it's just because I grew up in a house that had squeaky floors, but it drives. I've had customers call and just they're willing to tear their house apart to get rid of one or two little squeaks. It's like, really? That's it, huh? It's definitely a first world problem there.
We've talked about that on the podcast before. Squeak No More was one of the go-to products we had listeners write into us about with suggestions for that product. Yeah, it doesn't bother me either. It bothered me when I was a teenager and I was trying to sneak in and out of my parents' house.
I got adept at knowing exactly. It was like walking through a landmine field, I got pretty adept at knowing exactly where they were.
I went straight for the window.
As always, we heard from our listeners, and I sure appreciate when you folks write in with questions and comments. This comes from Mike in Sunnyvale, California. Dear Fine Automotive Maintenance Podcast, I recently had the same lug nut problem as Jeff mentioned in episode 412. Google provided a simple solution, which is a non-standard sized 20 millimeter 6-sided socket. It's large enough to fit over a distorted lug nut, but small enough not to spin. If it doesn't fit, a properly sized hammer will seat it. Although 20 millimeters is non-standard, they carry them at Lowe's. They're hidden in a cabinet in the tool section. I think ahead of the show, you asked me if I had one of these, Jeff, because this was something you were going to try, right?
Right, yeah. But as it turned out, I only had one really stubborn one, and a 19 millimeter socket and a 20-ounce ball peen hammer took care of it.
So if you go down a millimeter, you have to go up a few ounces in hammer, right?
Yeah.
Mike, I'm curious. You've had to deal with this. Maybe you're not. Maybe you're a newcomer to California, but it doesn't seem like that would be a problem there. But I don't know.
Yeah, Minnesota was everything. If it was over 2 years old, it was rusted from the salt.
Yep.
It's a tough place to be. Do you guys use a lot of salt out there on the road in the winter?
It's horrible.
Yeah.
I hate to drive my new car around in the when it's been snowing. I'm just like, oh man, maybe I should just stay home.
Right.
Well, it's interesting that liquid they put down, right? So before the snow's coming, because all of a sudden the roads have a haze to them, right? It's not the rock salt that used to be bouncing around the road when you drove over it.
When I had been out of contracting for a while, I still had my truck, but I had a little commuter car. I was commuting back and forth, and I'm not a classic car guy, but I looked at getting kind of a 1978 boxy pickup truck, cool, because you can get one for actually relatively cheap, under like $15,000 or something. And I did a little research, and I discovered that the metal they used on those things were so bad, you would drive, because I talked to all these classic car guys I didn't know anything about. They're like, nah, you can't drive. I wouldn't drive it all the time in the winter, but they said you don't even want to drive that thing out once in the winter because it would just instantly start rusting.
It's heartbreaking, right? But yeah. Well, thanks for that, Mike. This comes from Alex. Oh no, I just listened to you read my letter on the podcast and you bungled maybe the most important part. Okay, this was in regard to our conversation about type O mortar for masonry. Although I was supposed to say, although it does have Portland, a significant portion by volume is lime. The correct formula for type O mortar by volume is 2 parts lime, 1 part Portland, and 9 parts sand. Regards, Alex. Sorry about that, Alex. Sometimes my reading is a little dyslexic for sure. What did you, speaking of mortar, Colin, how did you decide what to use? Like, did you talk to your tile supplier and settle on the Mapai stuff? Or did you have good feedback from other people? Or is this a random shot at the dartboard?
Yeah, it was like what Lowe's stocked and has like all their stuff. So it all works together. And, I did look online for some, guys doing tile work, or like they're doing pretty good work, and they were using it and they liked it. So that gave me some confidence.
I've heard nothing but good things about Mapai products. I've used a couple.
Oh, I'm like trying to think what I could use it for in other places. Like I'm like, I want to prime my fascia boards with it.
You're talking about the waterproofing?
Yeah.
Yeah, why don't we do that? Boy, our first question comes from the FHB forum. Hey guys, I've been a long time FHB podcast listener, and I've been reading as many articles as I can get my hands on. I'm planning a new home build in a few years, and I've been trying to think of every which way I can future-proof my new home. I want to make it highly maintainable and repairable. I've currently been turning my eye towards electrical. I know I want to support 20 amps throughout the house and would like each room to have its own breaker. Recently, I had the thought of running a single electrical cable to each room using a gauge rated for continuous 20 amp connections, number 12 wire gauge, and then adding a ceiling mounted junction box to split the cable so each power outlet and light switch can have its own cable. This would result in more cable usage throughout the project. However, it would make it result in multiple benefits. The cables would be easier to repair and replace if it was ever needed. Power draw over multiple outlets wouldn't heat cables as much as power requirements increase over the years. Am I overlooking anything? Is the additional connection in the junction box an additional hazard that outweighs the possible benefits? So I'm going to try and paraphrase what I think he was trying to do. So most receptacles and light switches are just, I've heard electricians described as daisy chain, and that means one box feeds the next, which in turn feeds the next, much like Christmas lights or what have you. So he's suggesting a central box with more of an octopus arrangement where you feed a bigger cable to this junction box and then smaller cables go to the individual receptacles or lights. So you guys have any thoughts on this before I weigh in?
I do. I have lots of thoughts. I think it's a terrible idea. Well, first of all, there's no the house I just came from had for whatever reason, the homeowner thought that bigger was better. So he ran, 12 gauge instead of 14 to every single outlet. And what a pain in the butt that is. It's just, there's just no reason for it. It's not.
So, I'm sure you can imagine why folks, this might be a good idea. Mark, why did you think it's a bad idea? Or why do you think it's a bad idea?
Well, it limits you can only put, there's easy to find online. There's calculations of how many wires and the size, like you can have three 12 gauge wires coming into a certain size, thick or deep box. And it just limits, if you wanted to add on from a different box, it limits you because you can't have all those wires because they will heat up in there. And the type of box that he's talking about, where it's one and then it's octopus, it would have to be the size of a 5-gallon bucket, I would think that junction box would be. So and I just don't see an advantage. And when you mentioned the daisy chain thing, if they're pigtailed properly, if each one is pigtailed and an outlet goes out, it won't affect the one down from it. So they are all kind of separate, and there's just a wire kind of running by them, I guess, when they're pigtailed together.
I think you'd agree, though. Most people don't do that. They run the cable to the two sets of terminals on the receptacle and use it to feed the next one.
You know what? I actually had I had a electrician. I asked the electrician if he pigtailed him, and he said no. I said, why not? He said, honestly,
because it's a pain.
No, he said it's job security because then we know that we're gonna have to go back, and it's like, really, that's odd. You're not my electrician anymore.
I don't know.
I do everyone that way. There's no excuse not to. It's faster, sure, but
I wonder. I think that the receptacle connection is more reliable than a wire nutted connection in many cases, depending on how good you are at doing that, right?
Well, but the thing is, you can track it down. You don't have to open up if there's if the last one goes out if the first one goes out, you don't know where it goes. When they're pigtailed, you can tell if an outlet goes out. That's the only one you got to worry about. It's not the ones, down the line, I guess.
Right.
So it's, but yeah, I don't. And the other thing, there's no reason to beef up power. It's just dealing with and just twisting nuts and putting them in. It's just 12 gauge is. Just use it where you need it in the laundry rooms and the kitchens. And I wouldn't. And if he does end up doing this, he probably will. Just make sure you can't do. I'm pretty sure you cannot go from a 12. Well, I know you can't. You can't go from a 12 gauge into a box and then drop it down to a 14.
No, that's what I was going to say about this whole thing is that you just are not allowed to do this. If you have a 20 amp circuit with 12 gauge wire, you can't use smaller conductors on the circuit. You can put 12 gauge wire on a 15 amp circuit, but the risk is then someone's going to put a 20 amp breaker seeing this 12 gauge wire, and there's going to be smaller conductors down the line. Yep. So it's there are rules for a reason.
In your bedroom, you want less of a incidence to trip that. I mean, these 20 amps are for a reason because they're running big equipment, but if you get a short in your room, and now everything's a little bit different with arc fault and all that stuff, but if you got a short in your alarm clock wire, you want your breaker to trip. You want it to be so it's not starting a fire because a 20 amp circuit can handle a lot more, but like I said, it's a little different now with arc fault, but no reason to do 20 amps. Don't do it.
Yeah, I agree.
Colin, what do you think?
Oh, for me, just the idea of future-proofing your house, I wouldn't do it by sending a home run to each room and octopussing it out. Like that to me, you're like anticipating problems that probably are never going to exist anyway. So just go the standard route. It works. It works.
And the things that we're producing now are taking much, much less power, not more and more power. So if anything, you're needing less. I was looking into running. Have we done a story on this, Patrick? Running low voltage to all the lighting, because everything in the house that I'm building is going to be low voltage LED lighting. Have we done a story on actually running all the wires to these fixtures low voltage? Because you can use like a Cat 6 or anything.
No, Mark, we haven't, and that's something that's definitely being worked on. We're working with a home integrator, Michael O. To find one of those projects that has one of these low voltage control systems, and you can use it to control line voltage too, or low voltage. It's with everything. The switching is done with the low voltage side.
I researched it, and I have to look at it again because I researched it about a year ago, and I don't recall why I opted out because it just didn't seem like it was that much. But now with cable, with copper prices the way they are, that it might be. The savings I'm going to have to look into that again. So love to talk to your expert, whoever you're talking with.
Oh yeah. It's Michael O. And Aaron Stallings. They did a pro talk with us. If anyone's interested, they had some pretty cool stuff to say. I think Jeff would agree.
Ooh. Yeah.
Yeah. I want to say if you want to future-proof your electrical system, make sure your panel is big enough, right? Leave some extra slots in there for breakers. It is a frustration I'm currently dealing with in my barn. I wish I would have gotten a much bigger panel.
Oh yeah.
That's a dumb thing to do.
Yeah, and if you think you're going to install something heavy duty like a jacuzzi outside or something in the basement that you're run some if your panel's in the garage or somewhere away from where you're going to do it, at least run some conduit and fire foam up the ends, but just have them there so you can pull a wire through easily for any kind of future things that you might, wet bar or whatever. Just make it easy to get the wires from the
maybe
panel to
a home run from the panel up to the attic or some other place where you could do further distribution wouldn't be a bad idea too, or in the basement.
That's what we would do when we would run. We would always have something when we built houses, and it cost next to nothing. I mean, it cost a chunk of 10-foot chunk of conduit, but we'd either run it to the attic or run it from the garage to the house just to make it sure that, it was easy for the next person to add on for the finish basement or whatever.
I'm glad you mentioned that you have to seal the ends, though, because I think that is a significant problem, both for fire safety and air sealing, right? If you have this enormous pipe going up to the unconditioned attic, that's a problem.
It is.
This comes from Schmoliver, also on the FHB forum. I'm in the process of redoing the flooring in one of our bathrooms and putting down ceramic tile. The bathroom is about 80 square foot. Does this sound familiar, Colin? The existing floor was carpet. Terrible idea to whoever built the place, except for the toilet area, which was vinyl flooring. Once I started demoing the carpet, I realized the subfloor consisted of plywood, the thickness unknown, and then particle board, glued/nailed screwed down about 5/8 inch thick. I know tiling over particle board is a horrible idea, but the bathroom area is tight, and demoing out the particle board is something I would like to avoid. I saw in other forums and asking some other people the best way to move forward without demoing the particle board and came up with the following strategy. 1. Seal the particle board with RedGuard and install 1/4 inch thick cement board over sealed particle board and screw down only. Seal the gaps and seams with silicone and then tape/apply thinset over the seams and apply the RedGuard over them and maybe the screws. Then install tile over the cement board. Grout, caulk the perimeter with silicone. Please let me know if this will work, or if I need to change the strategy, or if this is overkill, or if I'm missing anything. Wow, Colin, if you found particle board in your bathroom, what would you have done?
Personally, I'd get rid of it. I cutting a floor out, even if you leave the edges, like the distance of your saw. But the thing is, I think the method that was suggested is a little overkill if you want to do it. If the floor is solid under there, right? Let's say the OSB is in good condition and all that, whatever. Can't you just install Ditra?
We should tell folks.
Schluter Ditra, yeah, it's rated to go over plywood and OSB.
We should tell folks it's an uncoupling membrane, which allows the tile to move somewhat independently of the floor, so the floor can expand and contract with seasons, and if there's a little movement in it, it's not going to transmit into the tile and crack it.
So, Patrick, you know what, Colin? I called you Patrick because your name is Patrick on the screen. Don't ever do that again.
I didn't think you were talking to me.
I was looking at you.
I've never used the name before.
Yeah, just so people know what I'm talking about. Colin's middle name is Patrick, and he put Patrick 2 on the screen, so just to throw me for a loop. So would you put that Schluter system right over the? So were you saying tear out the particle board and then use the Schluter?
No. What I personally would do is get rid of the OSB, just because I think it's a horrible place to have OSB as in a bathroom.
So it's particle board over plywood. So which layer are you saying get rid of?
Well, he's saying it's glued to the plywood. So if you wanted to remove it, you might literally have to cut both layers out. So then I was saying, if it's solid, like if the floor is decent, I think you could go with an uncoupling membrane rather than this complex buildup of different products that are seems like a legit way I would have done it 15 years ago.
I'm going to say that particle board is never part of a good tile assembly. The TCNA is not going to ever sign off on this, is my guess, right?
Yeah, I mentioned this to a tiling buddy of mine, and he said no, he wouldn't even consider doing it over particle board. But the way that he describes it, gosh, it seems like it would work. I mean, but I don't. Yeah.
Once again, like, are you going to invest all this time in cutting, fitting, tile grouting, and then have this not work? I just don't think it's worth it.
But cutting floors out is one of my least favorite jobs in the world.
I don't know why. I see it as a good excuse to buy a oscillating multi-tool, right? That's going to make getting the perimeter a lot easier, if not noisier.
How many blades would you need to do that? I don't want Jeff to chime in because he has a story about an oscillating multi-tool that is incomprehensible to me, that he cut an entire bathroom out with one blade.
Yep.
Is that true?
Yep.
As long as you don't hit nails, right?
Yep.
Oh,
I mean,
as long as you don't hit wood.
I mean, it was a half moon blade, so it was, it was a long blade.
That's patience, man. I was thinking chainsaw might be the tool of choice.
No kidding. I mean, I know you're joking, but there is.
I'm only partially joking.
Yeah.
We had a saw kicking around the office at one point that was like a no clearance fence.
Yeah. So, flush cut circular saw. Yeah.
Yeah.
I wonder
and
if
you can rent those.
Oh, yeah, that's what I was going to ask.
Yeah.
That's the way to go. It's fast.
Way faster than a Sawzall or a multi-tool for sure.
Multi-tools too. You have to be. It was like the perfect tool, not made for me, because it's one of those tools where the harder you press, the slower it goes. Yeah. And you just intuitively, you just want to push. You just think the harder the faster, and it's a hard lesson to learn.
Yeah, Kevin Ireton did a story for Fine Home Building a few years ago on how to get the most from your multi-tool. And one of the things that changed the way I use it is, he's like, if you can make the cut so it lets the sawdust out of the kerf somehow, so that means if you're cutting vertically, you start at the bottom instead of the top. And, if you can get the sawdust out, the blade doesn't get as hot and will last a lot longer. And I found that to be completely true.
I bought a really junky, just an emergency out on a job site, needed one really bad. So the really cheap oscillating, and I think it lasted that job and one other, and then it would literally, the tool would shake and the blade would stand still. What?
So was this Harbor Freight or something else?
It was right along those lines. Yeah, it was. It might have been a Harbor Freight tool.
That's actually one of the tools I've heard that's not terrible from there. If you're in a jam, that they will cut, and it's like a fraction of the cost of a good one.
Yeah.
This comes from Alexander. Hi, all. Would love to get everyone's take on this project. We're building a new home outside of Cody, Wyoming, climate zone 6, bordering on 7, and we're planning on starting with the garage/workshop. This will be a semi-conditioned space that will have a minimum amount of heat to keep things from freezing. We'll have a 2-car garage with a single door and a 500-square-foot workshop. Part of the garage storage area will eventually be used for solar energy storage batteries. It will be built into a hillside in the style of a walkout basement, partially due to the terrain of the lot and for wind mitigation. The architect has specified R19 walls, an R14 ceiling with drywall, but we'd like to up these R values depending on the material cost when we start construction. Right now, I'm leaning toward an in-slab hydronic system for the steady state heating to keep it above freezing, and then have an on-demand heating system when the spaces are in use. A wood stove in the wood shop, and ceiling-mounted infrared radiant in the garage. I'm pushing for in-floor since air sealing is going to be a major challenge in both spaces. The dust collection system in the wood shop will be extremely vented with makeup air, and I feel like heating the slab would be the best way to deal with this. Ideally, I'd like to use a heat pump for the in-floor heating with a propane backup for those extra cold days. Depending on cost, I'd like to have the shop zoned separately in case I need to up the temperature overnight for a project that is drying/setting up. Okay, so I actually lost count, but how many heating systems is Alexander talking about in this single 500 square foot wood shop with a 2-car garage attached?
Two heating systems, but one is split into two zones. The hydronic,
But there's also a wood
And
shop,
a wood
a
stove,
wood stove, and
yeah.
and
and
the
a
infrared.
radiant heater,
All right,
and
so I missed
Yeah.
one. Yeah,
Yeah.
I missed one. Sorry.
So yeah, radiant wood, hydronic, and propane. So four, right?
so the
Yeah.
hydronic system is going to be heated mostly with a heat pump, but also
didn't-
with propane backup. So
I've
It's-
never heard of a hydronic being. How does that work? So is it like just a boiler? I mean, those
So I think if you have a-
Heater.
yeah, if you have a heat pump hot water heater, you can use it for a heating loop too with a
Okay.
heat exchanger. Ben
Yeah,
Bogey recently
yeah.
built a house with a sand air, hydro air in-floor system, I think. Yeah.
Yeah, some companies make them specifically. They sell them as a system. I believe.
Yeah, I just thought it was electric. I know, if you wanted to stay electric and stay away from gas, I just thought it was electric boilers you need. And those things are, from what I understand, are very inefficient.
I think Alexander's got too many heating systems. I think he's got to simplify his life.
Yeah, he's overthinking. Right? He's overthinking.
I think the hydronics weight. I mean, it does get windy and cold in Wyoming. So yeah, the hydronic system is. I don't think you can really go wrong with that.
I agree. I like that.
And it can do all the things you want it to do, Alexander. You can crank it up when you have a special project, right?
Yeah.
You can put it up an hour ahead of when you want to go out there and work and keep it lower the rest of the time. I mean,
So
they
my
take
question.
slow.
Yeah, my question is, how would you? Because I'm assuming he's kind of out in the sticks here, and let's say you have an electric system that's doing the hydronic. It's a heat pump. So you think he was thinking about having how hard is it to have a system where if the electricity goes out, you can run it on propane? I mean, is that a relatively easy setup, or?
It might be a propane generator, he meant. I don't know.
The problem from accounts I've heard with folks who live off the grid with hydronic system is running the circulator pump. Electric motors take a lot of electricity compared to like an LED light or some of the other things that, can run a house that needs to run on batteries or a generator for a portion of the time. But electric motors like those in a circulator pump are a much bigger deal. So I would say that's not the best choice, but the wood stove would work fine,
Yeah.
right?
Yep.
I think that having a wood stove in a rural area, assuming you have, a supply of wood, is a no-brainer because you might be out of power for days or weeks, right? In some cases.
That's exactly why we're installing one. The thing is, if people think you're going to save, you don't save money burning wood if you figure out how much. Well, plus the install on this, my house is a 2-story steep pitch. Those insulated pipes it's going to cost me $4,000 just to run the pipe out the roof. That's a lot of wood burning there. I mean, that's a lot of electric bills. But just like you said, Patrick, there's not, if power goes out, you need to heat
You're
your house.
fine. Yeah,
Yeah.
you're going to be safe, and assuming you have a couple cords of wood, you could go a long time.
All winter, basically, if the house is insulated well.
Do you have thoughts on this, Jeff?
Well, one thing he mentioned was having the dust collector exhaust outside, and he's losing all his heat right there.
I know, but what do you do? What can you do instead?
I think you can reintroduce it back into the shop. You just need to filter it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Okay, that's a good suggestion. So I kind of was under the impression that they, were so people put the collector outside in a closet or whatever because they don't want to listen to it. But you're saying if you keep it in the space where the shop is, that's a non-issue.
Yeah, I mean, well, most shops I think probably have it right in the shop. But if you're gonna, isolate it for sound, you can reintroduce that air.
Okay, that's a very good suggestion.
You're right, Jeff. That is a lot. That's a lot. Well, I mean, not that it's going to run all day long, but it is basically.
But it's going to, it's going to suck it out in a matter of seconds.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, because you're talking hundreds of CFM for a dust collector, right? That's a big honking vacuum.
That's why I want a hot slab under me.
Right.
I think that makes a lot of sense in a workshop and a /garage workshop.
Yeah, because often you're down to your short sleeves, right? Because you're working, but you're sort of cold. And, so if you were on warm concrete floor, that'd be a great way to work.
Mm-hmm.
I've never heard anyone who had one who didn't love it. Like no one ever says, I really shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
This comes from Jeremiah. I've been enjoying the questions and subsequent discussion in this forum for quite some time now. So far, I've found a broad range of topics and the information to be very helpful. One topic I haven't been able to find a conversation on is sheathing less construction. I realize there are plenty of buildings that don't use OSB or plywood sheathing and simply use polyiso or XPS as sheathing/continuous insulation over wood-framed and wind-braced walls. The builders I've seen using this method seem to be selecting this assembly primarily for the cost savings by not installing OSB or plywood and not for any sound building science reasons. I'm located in Midwestern Ontario and have been building for almost 30 years. During my career, I've always used OSB or plywood sheathing. However, over the last couple of years, my company has been moving in the direction of high-performance building and passive house building, which has led us down the path of super insulated walls and all the good stuff that comes with this method of construction. So my question for the forum is, with the advent of products like Solitex Mento Plus from ProClima, which can be used directly over the exterior of a stud wall to create a sheathingless enclosure and is robust enough to accommodate dense packed cellulose or fiberglass, is cold sheathing still a concern for thick double stud walls? To me, the idea of installing a skin like this on the exterior with a vented rain screen and using a smart vapor barrier on the interior of a dense packed double stud wall would create a very dryable wall. I realize that OSB and plywood might be necessary at times as a structural requirement, but in situations when leaden wind bracing is suitable, a sheathingless wall seems to make a lot of sense to me. Also, it's nice and light to stand up. Okay, have at it. I welcome your feedback. Well, I bet you'd agree, Mark, it's going to be lighter than a 40-foot wall sheathed with plywood, right?
Yeah, that's true. And, you brought up this in the past. I don't know. So he's in Midwestern Ontario. What you brought up, like in coastal regions or, like we've seen at the tornadoes recently, there's just no protection there. I mean, but so Midwestern Ontario, I don't know what kind of storms they get, but you've brought up the concern in the past of the flying debris is going right through these walls. And that's a great point. Well, otherwise,
it also, like in Ontario, it might just be like a bear's running really fast by our house.
Moose antlers.
And he tumbles in through your wall.
Right. Yeah, what is the moose antler rating on that wall assembly?
I mean, I've come full circle on this question. I used to be a huge advocate of foam sheathed walls with wind bracing, but you guys heard me say it. I've seen the damage caused by tornadoes, flying debris, and boy, I don't think that's something we need to worry less about going forward. I think it's something we're going to have to worry more about.
Yeah, just for durability, sustainability, longevity, it just seems like a good idea
to sheathe it.
Yeah,
to sheathe it. Yeah. And I mean, the shaking resistance of a plywood sheathed or OSB sheathed building is way greater than one that's not, I'm sure.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. And maybe we're just prejudiced to the fact that it's just, that's how we do it. But I don't, yeah. And what's the benefit? I mean, you got to weigh the cost benefit, I guess. I mean, how much you can still build a wall that functions. Right. Yeah, exactly. Yeah.
Patrick, didn't you do a story where passive houses were made similar to this method? Because weren't they pre-packed with cellulose and brought in on a crane or something?
Yeah. So the company is EcoCore. They're in, I think it's Belfast, Maine. Anyway, but yeah, they make prefab passive houses. But as I recall, Colin, they had a sheathing layer interior.
Oh, okay.
So they had like a double stud wall with a sheathing layer on the inside, all wrapped with, I think it was this Mento Plus product. It looked like huge upholstered cushions when they were done, and then they put it on a truck and take it to a job site. Yeah, I mean, aren't you working on a story or worked on a story with Ben Bogey on double stud walls, right?
Well, I'm about to.
Yeah.
we haven't done it yet, so I'm still in the dark on.
Are they using sheathing?
Right.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Where at in the assembly?
This is on the outside.
Okay.
But the last house, it was a reverse, so the sheathing was on the inside,
All the way on the inside.
on the entire building.
That is weird, but I kind of like it. You could put a picture anywhere.
That is nice.
Well, what they ended up doing though was building chase walls on the inside, right? So I don't know if you put building 2x4 framed walls on the inside with the plywood, so that now you have chases for all your wires and everything.
What do they call that? A service cavity in what's oh my gosh, Ted Benson's company. I can't remember it now, but their prefab house unit.
With the chases built in? That seems like a lot
Yeah,
of
they
work.
call it a service cavity.
Are they doing double studs, like as in they're all in a line, or are they just staggering, having one plate and just staggering?
On the new assembly, I'm not sure. I don't know if they're standing up two walls. That's usually what I see. I don't know if it's a speed thing, because, building walls and standing them up is quick when you have to stagger them and where you're nailing the sheathing. And I don't know. I've never built a wall like that. It sounds a little wonky.
I've seen builders do the, 2x6 plates, top and bottom plates, and then there's the 2x4 studs, and every 16 on center, or what do they do? Every 12 on center, but then one's towards the out and one towards the inside. So it's, if you're hanging drywall or sheathing, it's every 2 feet, but so they have a break there. That's one kind of simple way of doing it. But
I framed houses on 2-foot centers, and it's harder after the fact to make changes. I would say
and it's not easy to hang a picture.
Or your window coverings, or your television,
cabinets.
I used to think that less wood was better, but the older I get, the more you realize that there are trade-offs with that. When you only have one stud on a window opening or a door opening, for example, and that's oftentimes fine structurally, but how the heck do you fasten casing? And it's
exactly.
Put the plywood, put your sheathing on the inside.
I think that's a really interesting concept. I don't remember. I don't think I've seen that.
Yeah. I'll hook you up with some videos on it.
So was it OSB or plywood or zip?
No, because it was on the. I'm pretty sure it was just plywood taped. Yeah. I'm sorry. It's like, how many stories and jobs we go on. It's like it all gets convoluted in my head. I have to sort those thoughts before I start.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. And I mix up project to project, and I'm sure there's people listening we didn't do that. What's he talking about?
And I've been shooting Mastered in a Minute for the last 2 days. So, I'm very focused on that.
Do you want to tell folks what Mastered in a Minute is, in case they haven't heard of this video program?
Well, they're minute-long videos to help you learn a tip, trick, or technique in 1 minute, hopefully to get you out of a jam, or if it's something you're interested in and don't know about, they're good little gateway videos. And this time we're using peel and stick membrane on, for ice and water shielding on critical areas of the roof, like the valley, the eaves, and roof to wall transition.
That seems really cool. Yeah. So these are probably meant to be super searchable, right?
Yes. So,
and I don't know if you guys are on, you're on a job site, or you're doing the project and you're in the middle of it, and it's like, oh, how do you do that again? And you search for a video. And if you're like me, you're always searching for the ones that, they're more than 30 seconds, but you don't want the one that's 45 minutes long. You're always looking I just want to know this really quick answer.
Yeah, or even to dig what you need out of a 10-minute video can be time consuming when you're in that mindset. Absolutely. Of I'm working. So, obviously we don't have a Mastered in a Minute for everything, but write in your suggestions,
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
I get so frustrated when I'm trying to learn something on YouTube, and the folks spend, minutes on the wind up. I'm like, just get to the thing, please. You're killing me.
Yeah, that's the worst. And some videos, or some, depends on what what you have for a device, but it's always nice to be able to scroll through and see. It's like, oh, he's finally stopped talking at this point at minute 3, and I can start watching there where he's actually doing something.
So what's on the agenda for this weekend, gentlemen? We'll go around the horn, and then I want to remind folks about something else. Who wants to go first?
Oh, it's simple for me. You're going to go for an hour. Let me go for like 2 seconds.
You're right. You know me well.
I'm getting a threshold cut at a marble shop, so that on the top of my threshold into the shower, I've got one nice uniform piece. So I'm going to go hand pick a piece, and they'll cut it for me.
While you're there?
Yes. Well, I don't know. They may say come back in a few days because I want a leather finish on it, pencil edge, and then I can finish tiling the shower base. So then I can attack the walls. So
cool.
Christmas is coming up. I don't know how far I'll get.
Yeah.
Well, it's nice to always have some feature that you can. Everyone has a budget, so you can't do the whole floor in marble. You can't do the whole walls of your shower in marble. But it's always nice to have something that you can point to and say that was, handcrafted, or that was, really unique or really specific. So that sounds fun. I'm going to be working on the house, Patrick. Surprise, surprise. So the framers, they kind of did me a favor by coming out and kind of squeezing me in between their jobs. So I just told them, just get the big stuff done, crank it out. So we'll probably be doing a lot of just, cut and threshold framing and blocking up, drywall blocking. And that's just kind of following them, putzing around and the stuff that I don't want them to mess with. I just want them to power through and get it going. So a lot of little stuff.
Did you leave the windows and doors sheathed, Mark, for airtightness testing, or did you have them cut those out to make it easier?
I had them cut it out.
Yeah.
Well, and mainly I was lifting walls too when they weren't around or before they started, and I didn't have the help to lift a heavy sheath wall, so I really didn't have a choice.
But so you cut out the window openings for weight savings.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep. So,
how about you, Jeff?
I don't know. I don't really have any specific plans. Maybe clean out the basement or something, or start working on that. Nothing very exciting.
That sounds horrible.
It is, but I can't do any projects down there till I clean. So
right. Well, I'd like to remind folks about the Pro Talk Live in Portland, Oregon, January 12th with Tim Mueller, Brian Mueller, Josh Salinger, and Lindsay Shack. It's a day-long TED Talk type presentation hosted by yours truly, and it promises to be a good way to learn about how to work smarter, not harder, which is what Tim's presenting on, how to build better spec homes, and I would argue that's better homes generally that Brian Mueller is presenting on, how to not do an energy retrofit with Josh Salinger, which sounds, I can't wait to hear that, and then creating beautiful spaces that are nurturing for clients by Lindsay Shack of Love Shack Architecture. And I hope to see all of you out there, and it should be a really good and informative time. And there's a happy hour, of course, afterward, because Fine Home Building doesn't do anything without having a happy hour afterwards.
Yeah. Well, it's probably smarter to do it afterwards than before, too.
Oh, we'll be happy before.
Right.
Indeed. So I hope to see everyone out there. Once again, it's January 12th, 9 to 6:30 in Portland, Oregon at, I forget the name of the venue now. Check.
Oh my gosh, it's such
Salmon
a memorable name. Yeah.
Salmon on red. Red on salmon.
Red on salmon.
Red on salmon. And you can go to finehomebuilding.com/Pro Talk Live to learn more about that and sign up. And I hope you will, because it should be a cool time.
Great time.
You guys have anything to say or offer before we go?
You never said what you were doing this weekend, Patrick.
Oh, yeah, because it doesn't change for the last month. I'm going to try and finish up the top 2 winders. I did the top third, and I ran out of hardwood flooring despite the flooring salesman telling me I needed more than what I bought. Listen to people who know what they're doing.
Right. Yeah. I've never done that.
I've been fastening this with a 15 gauge finish nailer through the tongue, and by this point now I've put down like 20 some square foot of flooring that way, and it works fine. If you have a small space, you don't need to rent a flooring stapler or a flooring nailer, although it does have some advantages, but 15 gauge flooring finish nailer also works great.
Mm-hmm. How often are you spacing nails?
As often as I can, Colin. You know,
are you doing like 3 inches? Like, are you going nuts?
Yeah, and you know the winders, like the housing of the nail gun gets in the way on the skinny side, right? So like on the skinny side, some are face nailed, and then spacing isn't as tight as I would like. But there's really little you can do because there's just not enough room to maneuver the gun.
Cool.
It's a good way to start your flooring too. Like, you know, when you're X close to the wall, you can't, the first row or two, you can't use the stapler or the flooring nailer. So this is a good way to do those first few rows or a couple rows.
Interesting.
Well, let's do the last part of the show. Unfortunately, that is all the time we have for today. Thanks to Jeff, Colin, and Mark for joining me, and thanks to all of you for listening. Please remember to send us your comments, questions, and suggestions to fhbpodcast@taunton.com. And please like, comment, or review us however you're listening, and helps other folks find our podcast. Stay safe, everybody. Keep craft alive. Happy building, and thanks very much for listening.